Welcome back to Voice Global. I'm your host, Pete Erickson, and I have really enjoyed the conversations we've been having across the spectrum. But this next conversation, I really look forward to because it's really at the forefront of our industry and at the forefront of how things are changing related to media and how we access information and the transformation of the broadcast industry. Um, our next guest is steeped in digital experiences. He was the director of the Digital Experience Lab at Exploratorium, which is one of the renowned sort of experiential museums based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I grew up till I was 10 in the Bay Area, and I actually went to the Exploratorium when I was a child. So great to meet somebody that was so involved there. Today, however, he is now the senior producer of Voice and AI for KQED, which is one of the foremost public broadcasting organizations in the country. Welcome to the stage, Mr. Lowell Robinson. Lowell, how you doing?
I'm well, thanks, Pete. I'm really excited to be here.
So I think first and foremost, let's talk a little bit about this role that you have because it's really kind of I think indicative of the changing times and the transformation that we're all in. So senior producer of voice and AI, not a not something that you would have seen even probably 5 years ago. But tell us about this position that you have at KQED.
Yeah, so the this role is brand new. Well, not brand new, but new for KQED, and I work with a team, small team, and what we think about is new content for emerging platforms, as well as how we can reformat the existing content that that KQED does to better fit sort of this emerging landscape.
So let's talk about that a little bit. I think that you know uh, with the arrival of devices in our homes, our kitchens, and our living rooms, people are accessing information in a much different way. And I think that especially the public stations with news and information. Uh, Tell us a little bit about that with regards to how people are accessing uh, your radio broadcast content, via devices, and are you seeing like a you know you seeing a big shift from traditional radio to people accessing digitally through the devices?
Right. So radio is still the most widely used media in the United States, and and I think that local news is just so important to us. And what's interesting is that voice and digital assistants are just very personal, and so it's a great match because uh, to have this personal connection, to be able to ask for news uh, content that's important to you when you want it is really just one more new avenue for people to get content. So it's not really in any way a replacement for broadcast media. It's just one more channel, one more way for listeners to stay engaged and informed.
It's interesting. I think that yeah, it's not it it is a new channel, but I have to say, like, people like me, I mean, I'm finding like that's my primary channel. Whether I'm in my home or now in my car, I'm using digital services to access my content. So it definitely has, I just noticed in my own behavior how much that's changed. Um, let's talk a little bit about on demand. So, people are accessing, news snippets or podcasts that are part of your network. How much are you seeing, people accessing specific pieces of content that might be on demand versus broadcast content that's the morning news show or whatever? Are you finding because it's it's one thing that it's a different channel, but it's another thing that they're accessing even a different kind of content through that channel, which would be on demand versus the live news.
Well, we really see both. You 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 might just be doing a live stream of a traditional broadcast and being able to bring that up on a device, whether that's a speaker at home or in your car. But there's also this new what's really like algorithmic playlists, which are content that um, might be personalized to you or might be a particular broadcaster that you've subscribed to that's creating a new playlist channel that you would be listening to, and you could have a continuing listening experience of that, of stories that might change or evolve and over the day, as well as being able to ask for something specific. So you can just ask for a podcast, or you can just ask for a specific news piece. And that's also something that we're exploring quite a bit in terms of how powerful it might be to use voice search to be able to ask for something that you, how much do you want to drill down in terms of specific content? Um,
Right. So you might be interested in a certain topic. Maybe you're a fan of politics and you want to ask about certain political races, or you're a fan of science and you want to find out, when is the next NASA launch or the next SpaceX launch, or you want to hear stories about those things. You can drill down in. So let's talk a little bit about discovery and the business that you're in. I think a lot of our industry, we talk about discovery quite a bit. Um, Not only for discovering voice skills and voice actions, but really it's down to the content. Um, so how much of your role when you're as the senior producer of voice and AI, um, how big a role is discovery playing in terms of like what your thinking is and how people can find that content that they're looking for?
well, I think discovery is certainly it's still in its infancy that way. I was thinking about when I do like a search with the search engine, I'm quite skilled at it these days, and I'm still not always getting the result that I want, but I know how to adjust what I'm asking for. I think voice is more challenging that way because uh, if I'm not getting the result that I'm expecting on the first result, um, like how many in a audio first sort of experience, how many of those am I going to listen to, um, which might be different with a multimodal
Right.
display.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so there are certain things, certainly from more of a like a utility standpoint. Like if I know, hey, I'm really looking for this. So we did a California voter guide, and in that case, we know that you're asking about specifically about the ballot, right? About the
Right.
propositions, the initiatives, and in that case, asking for something specifically, um, it's a limited set, and we know exactly ways that you might be asking for it, and it has a very rich experience because maybe I don't know the proposition number, but I can say, hey, I really want to know what's the proposition about stem cells, and we can
Right.
give that to you, and then you can follow that up saying like who supports that, or
Right.
you know, or tell me even more about that. So with content like that, you can really see the power and the like the frictionless experience that voice can bring to finding something that you want. But when you're looking at more broader sets, there are still so many things that are really challenging. And one of the things I
Right.
think is probably like something like proper nouns. Like proper
Hmm.
nouns is really hard for machine learning. And
Hmm.
so putting things into sort of context and what are you really asking for, and is that even a show that you're asking for? Is that a person that you're asking? Is that an area? Um,
Right.
really is why we are such still at the beginning of
Right.
what kind of experience this can be.
Yeah, no, I think that the rabbit hole for voice and search and discovery, and then like you said, couple machine learning on the network to make our machines smarter or make our applications smarter. There are so many challenges, and I think what's interesting is what we're seeing is the result of those challenges being overcome slowly with time, and the capabilities of our devices are as always going to be improving. I do notice that we're using voice search more and more, especially even on our phones, and it's interesting how easy it is to adjust that. But if you're just getting the audio content, you're right. It presents a lot of challenges. But let's talk about, certainly it's good to point out the challenges. And I think the thing you brought up on nouns, I think a lot of the conversation designers that are out there are probably nodding their heads. Um, but let's talk about the opportunities. What are some of the things that are out now that you're finding success with? And I don't know if you can share anything about where you see things going in the future, but talk to us a little bit about the art of the possible and what's happening today.
Well, I think for me, one of the really exciting things is that like interactivity is agency. And I think the way of sort of engaging content, um, like with your voice, is just a really powerful thought about what does that mean for you to interact with content in a way that we currently haven't, and asking for something beyond what's being delivered, or really changes the dynamic of listeners to much more active participants. And I think that that's a really exciting space to be in.
Yeah, I think that's exciting. Yeah, I think and that personalization is really exciting. Um, I would love to know. I'd love to dig in a little bit on. You said you got a small team, but what does a team look like? As somebody who heads up voice and AI, what kind of skills do your team members have? And I think our I think our viewers would love to know a little bit. It's really probably a check on how they're building their teams. But what is the expertise that you all have in house there?
Right. So I work with another producer, Bianca Taylor, and Bianca worked in the newsroom well before I worked in the newsroom. And I think understanding like what how your organization is sort of set up and how to really take advantage of what you're good at is important, before, say, just translating it over into a new medium. And so of course, KQED is has tremendous expertise in not just journalism and storytelling, but in audio production. And so we already produce amazing audio, but we're also trying to say like, what's the length and format for if we are going to go into algorithmic playlists, like what does that work, and how quickly can you reformat that, and what kind of tools do you need and pipelines to be able to make that. And if you were going to make new content and talk to other producers about fitting into that space, what are like what do you need to be aware of, in terms of listening behavior? So really what we do as producers is we take a look at all the content that we're producing. We think about what things that we currently produce will fit into this new space and what adjustments need to be made. And as we make new content, how can we take from those lessons learned to make better content in the future?
So you're really focused on. It would make sense being at a broadcaster, very focused on the content. But I think you brought up some really interesting things, and that is that um, trying to you've got to, because of the volume of content you have to make decisions about, well, what are we, if we're going to repackage content, what are we repackaging, how is it going to be repackaged, what tools do we need? And I think um, that's where a lot of the opportunity comes from, because you can't linearly probably get to batch through all that content. I would imagine you have some pretty compelling digital production tools at your fingertips to help you with that. um, exciting stuff. So let's talk about the future a little bit. Where does this go from here? And we talked, I think, when we first met, we talked about interactivity and interacting with content. Um, but where do you think where's the exciting future for you, and where's the industry going to go? You don't have to tell us exactly what KQED is going to come out with, but where do you think industry is going here in the next year to 3 years?
Well, I think we're going to definitely be able to see more of a granular search to be able to dig into to programs, or to be able to have programs live, in multiple formats. Right now, one of really interesting uh, podcasts that we're producing with NPR has both a national and a local component, and the local component is geolocated, and so wherever you are, you're getting the national part, and then depending on where uh, you're listening to in the country, it's being stitched together to be able to have content that's connected and relevant to where you are in the country. I think that we're going to see a lot more interesting ideas for how content can come together, how we can bring in other sort of dynamics of where you are in the country, parts of what things are personalized for you. And I really, it's really exciting to just think about how content can live and match where you are and what you're doing.
Well, I think that you know, local news is local news has experienced massive challenges, right? And I think I'm excited to hear that because I think that if we can do a better job of delivering local content, we open up new opportunities to allow that news to flow locally. You know, local newspapers have been decimated in recent years. That's not any news to anybody. But I think that if we can improve our platforms so that we can start to reach people again locally, we open up new opportunities. That's very exciting. But I think you're right. I think it is. I think I think that personalization, localization, being able to access is those are things that the voice tech industry all has a hand in and all can play a role in. How about multimodal? We talk a lot about audio, and there's a lot of really good things happening in audio. Of course, the rise of Clubhouse, and then just the amount of content we're consuming from an audio standpoint. But let's talk a little bit about multimodal and the role that video plays. You think in broadcast going forward?
Well, yes. I mean, so the group that I work with, we're the radio part
Yes.
of KQED, but KQED is a dual licensee, and we do produce video and television. And um, I'm again, I'm just when I see the ability for you to use voice in a search capability and then just have the content that you want come up on a display, or if we're thinking about more of a future ambient computer household to be able to just have it play across multiple devices, across surfaces, I think that we that's probably one of the use cases that most people in their home are already really familiar with. Like they're very familiar to talking to their device to say, bring me this content, and because you get the visual feedback right away, you know that
Right.
it's right. And
Right.
so I think that that's an easier match, as opposed to hearing something and just saying like right away, do I know, um,
Right.
uh, that you
Right.
we see it first, and
Yes.
it's kind of easier that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. Admittedly, I listen to a lot of podcasts on YouTube, and it's interesting because most podcasters will put their stuff on YouTube now. But it's nice to have the screen telling you exactly what episode you're listening to and who's the guest, and that holding card is kind of cool. So um, I can see definitely see a role where there's a blend there between audio and video, and then the other way, where we may access a television program just 100% audio, just listening to it. Actually, a story: a friend of mine growing up, his parents used to record all the Star Trek episodes on cassette tapes, and then listen listen to the episodes. So I'd go over to his house, and then we would hear the Star Trek episodes. And to be honest, it was really cool. It was like, oh wow, it's really amazing how much comes through in the audio. Then you can kind of imagine everything. It's kind of cool. But well, I tell you, I had to ask, like, with you have such a unique and I think such a cool title, senior producer voice and AI. So when you meet somebody new, um, are you finding that people that may not know you, but they hear your title, are they pretty hip to like saying, "Oh yeah, I kind of get uh, why you would have that title"? Are people finding, are you finding that people are pretty in tune?
I think it probably takes a few sentences to put it into like
Yeah,
some sort of social space for them.
right.
I think that one of the interesting things about AI and machine learning is that right now those processes are pretty invisible to most people in their lives. Um, even 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 voice. They might think of voice as saying like I don't have a smart speaker, but it's like well there's quite a few things in our lives that and doesn't involve a smart speaker
Right.
um, and so when you're like, do you use a smartphone? Do
Right.
you do
Right.
you
Right.
do you,
Right.
do you connect to these parts? And
Right.
and I think that the idea of recognizing that a lot of content that we write now is algorithmically driven, um,
Right.
we also don't recognize that aspect, and so that there's people that are thinking about how that's put together or how it's affected, and that there isn't just a invisible machine that's doing that.
Right.
But it's that's not the immediate thing when people are like, "Oh, that's what you do." Um,
Right.
but that
Right.
is easy enough for people to say, "Oh, I hadn't thought about that." But yes, because
Right.
I do listen, maybe not in this way, but in this other way that's affected that
Right.
way. So I do use that app, or I do find things. Um, it's interesting, but I also feel that right now we're in a place where really important to think about the human element in this, that this isn't just about some algorithm that the, that is dictating things for us. It's this back and forth that we have between human editors, human producers, tools and pipelines that can make us put things together in a different scale in a different way. But it really is this back and forth relationship.
Yeah, I think that most people don't probably have an appreciation of what's happening behind the scenes when they're talking to a device or their phone or their car. Um, the amount of work that has to happen, the amount of content that has to be organized in the proper databases, the right algorithms have to match the situation, whether it's an intent or some other kind of input. Um, I know that you have an appreciation for this. You live it every day, and I think a lot of our viewers have an appreciation. But it is an amazing amount of work, and it's exciting to be able to chat with folks like you, Lowell, that are steeped in this on a day in day out basis. And I think that we've only just scratched the surface here. I think we could definitely go a lot deeper. And I hope that you'll come back and maybe we will explore, one of these topics and go a little bit deeper on it because I think there are so many things that the voice tech industry and the voice tech audience would gain from, your insights. So I do hope that you'll join us at a future voice conference. Uh, for now, though, what I would love to do is just kind of ask, a little bit parting question, selfishly for our viewers out there. Um, if there are folks that are looking to get in this industry, as somebody who's in this industry, what advice might you have for people that are, maybe they're a broadcaster and they're thinking, I think I want to go more into tech and look at this voice and AI landscape. Any advice you would have for somebody just getting in?
What I think is really exciting about this space is that, especially with voice, is that there's so many dimensions. There's so many dimensions to it. Really, any broadcast, what comes across is maybe like, hey, there's this program, and you have this relationship to someone. There's a huge team that put that together. Um,
Right,
Podcasting is a team sport. Broadcast is
right,
a team sport.
right,
Voice is also that, and I think
right.
we are only starting to learn what does that team look like. And
Yeah,
when you talk to a linguist, and you're just like, "Wow, that's someone really I need on my team." Like,
right,
why is this word hard to say? Why is this not being understood? And if you were thinking about voice design, and you're like, "Hey, I what am I even going to call my skill or my action? Can I say that? How does that work in a carrier
right,
phrase like that? Those are things where maybe you're not even a tech
right,
person, but you think about language, you think about different types of actions, interactions. There's so many possibilities for people with a passionate space to sort of explore what this can be and join those teams. That it's really not a matter of like, are you a coder? I really think there's a lot of ways to be involved and say, oh, this excites me. I want to do this. So that's what I would say is follow your passion.
That's great advice, and yeah, I think that this is a multifaceted industry. There's the artistic side, there's the science side, um, then there's kind of everything in between that makes it all happen at the end of the day. Well, Lowell, you've given us great insights. I really appreciate this conversation. Good luck out there on the West Coast, and uh, we will be tuning into KQED online and checking it out. And wish you all the best for the remainder of 2021.
Thank you, Pete. This was really, really fun conversation to have.
Thanks. Appreciate you being here.